Ambassador Junho Kim stood at the big window of the space station looking out at the dark stars. The alien ships were flying away from Earth, getting smaller and smaller, until they looked like tiny dots of light he had been watching them for. 3 hours now, his hands were shaking, but not from the cold air in the room. They were shaking from anger. 3 years ago, everything had been different. The big alien meeting called the Galactic Council had come to Earth with promises and smiles. They said they wanted to be friends with humans. They said they would protect Earth from the bad aliens who liked to fight and destroy planets. All they wanted in return was some of Earth's medical knowledge. Junho remembered that day very clearly. He had been so happy when the aliens signed the Treaty of Kepler Station. The document was written in 20 different alien languages, but the meaning was simple. Humans would share their amazing medical technology, and the aliens would keep Earth safe from any enemies. It seemed like a fair deal. The aliens had taken everything they wanted from Earth. The cure for cancer that Dr. Park had invented, the way to fix broken DNA that made people live longer, the medicine that could heal brain damage and make people smarter. The aliens had studied every detail and copied everything they said. They needed it for their own people. But now, as Junho watched the last alien ship disappear into space, he knew the truth. The aliens had lied to them. They had taken everything and given nothing back. When the real danger came, they had all run away like scared animals. The emergency message from Earth was still playing on the big screen in his office. The words made his stomach feel sick. The Vorthek Empire had attacked the solar system with a huge fleet of warships. They had destroyed the space stations around Mars and were now heading for Earth. The message said that 12 billion people were in danger and needed help right away. But where were the alien protectors? Where were the Helians with their crystal ships? Where were the Nethers with their gas weapons? Where were the Kricks with their insect armies? All of them had promised to defend Earth. All of them had sworn on their sacred honors that they would keep humans safe. Lieutenant Haewon Park ran into the room with tears on her face. She was the military officer who worked with Junho on the space station. Her uniform was messy and her eyes were red from crying. She had just received a personal message from her family. My brother was on Mars when they attacked, she said. Her voice was breaking. She could barely speak. The defense station where he worked was destroyed in the first wave of attacks. I do not know if he is alive or dead. The communication systems are not working anymore. Junho felt his heart breaking as he watched this strong soldier cry. Her brother Minho was only 22 years old. He had joined the Mars Defense Force because he wanted to protect Earth from exactly this kind of attack. Now he was probably dead because the aliens had broken their promise. The space station around them was full of alien diplomats who were supposed to be Earth's allies, but none of them were doing anything to help. They were all making excuses and saying they needed to check with their home governments first. The Helian ambassador kept saying that his crystal people were a peaceful race and could not fight. The Nether representative claimed that his gas people were too far away to help in time. The Krix delegate said that his insect people were busy with their own problems. Junho had spent 3 years working with these aliens. He had learned their languages and customs. He had eaten their strange food and listened to their boring speeches. He had believed that they were friends of humanity, but now he could see the truth in their alien eyes. They were scared. They were cowards. They had never intended to help Earth when real danger came. The worst part was that the aliens had not just broken their promise, they had made Earth weak by taking away its best defenses. When the humans had shared their medical technology, they had also shared information about human biology and weaknesses. The aliens now knew exactly how to hurt humans if they wanted to. Junho walked to his desk and opened a secret drawer. Inside was a small device that looked like a normal communication pad, but this device was connected to a network that the aliens knew nothing about. For 2 years, he had been sending secret messages to special human agents all over the galaxy. He had been preparing for exactly this situation. Before becoming a diplomat, Junho had worked for the Korean military intelligence agency. He had been trained to think like a spy and a soldier. He knew that in the dangerous galaxy, you could never trust anyone completely. So while he had been smiling and making friends with the aliens, he had also been gathering information about their weaknesses. The device in his hand contained the locations of every alien military base within 50 light years of Earth. It had detailed maps of their defense systems and lists of their most important leaders. It had information about their biology and psychology that could be used against them if necessary. Hey, one was still crying, but she looked up when she saw Junho holding the device. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I am sending a message," he said. His voice was calm, but inside he was feeling a cold anger that scared him. "I'm telling our people that it is time to show these aliens what happens when they break a promise to humanity." The message he sent was very short, but everyone who received it would understand what it meant. Operation Reckoning was now active all over the galaxy. Human agents who had been pretending to be simple traders and tourists would receive the signal. They would know that the time for pretending was over. Junho looked out at the stars one more time. The aliens thought they were so smart and powerful. They thought humans were just simple creatures who could be used and then thrown away. But they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping. For too long humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars against their own kind. They had climbed to the top of a dangerous world by being tougher and smarter than everything that tried to kill them. The aliens were about to learn that the gentle humans they had been dealing with were not the real humans at all. The real humans were the ones who had conquered their own planet through blood and determination. They were the ones who had learned that sometimes survival meant being willing to do terrible things to your enemies. They were the ones who never forgot a betrayal and never forgave a broken promise. As Junho watched the last alien ship disappear into the darkness, he smiled. For the first time in hours, the aliens had wanted to see what humanity was really made of. They were about to find out. Captain Minwoo Lee was floating in the command chair of his stealth ship when the secret message arrived. The ship was hidden in an asteroid field near Proxima Centauri where no alien sensors could find it. He had been waiting for 2 long years for this moment, and now it was finally here. The message was very short, but Minwoo understood exactly what it meant. Operation Reckoning was now active. All the planning and preparation was over. Now it was time to show the aliens what humanity could really do when they were angry. Minwoo had been pretending to be a simple cargo ship captain for the past 3 years. He would fly from planet to planet carrying supplies and goods, but his real job was much more important. He was mapping every alien military base and defense system in this part of the galaxy. His ship looked old and harmless, but it was actually filled with the most advanced spy equipment that Earth could build. The aliens had no idea that humans had been watching them so carefully. They thought humans were too simple and trusting to be sneaky, but Minwoo had learned the location of every alien weapons factory, every communication station, and every government building within 100 light years of Earth. His crew of 12 people were all specially trained soldiers who had been pretending to be cargo workers. They knew how to fight in zero gravity and how to use alien weapons against their owners. They had been practicing for this day in the hidden training rooms deep inside the ship. Minwoo activated the ship's communication system and sent coded messages to 30 other human ships that were scattered across the galaxy. Each ship looked like a normal trading vessel, but they were actually part of a secret military fleet that had been built in asteroid mining stations where alien inspectors never went. The plan was simple but deadly. The aliens had made themselves weak by trusting humans too much. They had allowed human traders and workers into their most secure facilities because they thought humans were harmless friends. But those humans had been secretly installing listening devices and computer viruses in every alien system they could reach. Dr. Sujin Han was working in her laboratory deep beneath the diplomatic station where Ambassador Junho lived. The room looked like a normal medical research facility, but it was actually a biological weapons laboratory that had been hidden for 2 years. Sujin had been studying samples of alien blood and tissue that she had collected during routine diplomatic medical examinations. The aliens thought she was just making sure that diseases could not spread between species. But she had actually been learning how to create diseases that would kill aliens without harming humans. The Helian aliens had bodies made of living crystal that could be shattered by certain sound frequencies. Sujin had developed a virus that would make their crystal structure weak and brittle. The nether aliens were made of living gas that needed special chemicals to stay together. Sujin had created a fungus that would eat those chemicals and make the nether bodies fall apart. The Krix aliens lived in a hive mind where all the insects in a colony shared the same thoughts. Sujin had invented special chemical signals that would confuse their communication and make them fight each other instead of working together. But the most dangerous weapon she had created was designed for the Vorthak Empire, who were attacking Earth right now. The Vorthak were similar to humans in many ways, but Sujin had found a weakness in their reproductive system. She had made a slow-acting poison that would make them unable to have children. Within 50 years, their entire species would die out. Sujin felt sick about what she was doing, but she knew it was necessary. The aliens had started this war. By breaking their promise to protect Earth now, they would learn that humans could be just as deadly as any warrior species in the galaxy. Engineer Tae-Young was working in the power control room of the space station. His job was to maintain the artificial gravity and life support systems that kept everyone alive, but he was also doing something much more dangerous. For the past year, Tae-Young had been secretly installing hidden computer programs in every alien system he could access every time an alien technician had asked him to help fix their equipment. He had planted a small virus in their computers. The viruses were designed to hide and spread slowly so the aliens would never notice them now. With a single command from his secret control panel, Tae-Young could shut down the power systems on dozens of alien worlds. He could disable their weapons and defense systems. He could crash their spaceships and destroy their communication networks all at the same time. The aliens thought they were so advanced with their technology, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had connected all their systems together in a giant network that was supposed to make communication easier, but that same network would allow Tae-Young to attack every alien world at onset. Tae-Young had also been studying the alien computer systems, and he had discovered something very interesting. The aliens had become so dependent on their technology that they could not function without it. If their computers stopped working, their entire civilization would collapse within days. He smiled as he looked at the control panel in front of him. The aliens were about to learn that the human who had been politely fixing their machines for years was actually their worst enemy. Major So-Young Kim was leading a team of 20 Special Forces soldiers through the maintenance tunnels beneath the alien military headquarters on Helix Prime. The tunnels were dark and narrow, but So-Young and her team moved through them like ghosts. They had been hiding on this planet for 6 months, pretending to be maintenance workers who cleaned the alien buildings, but they were actually elite soldiers who had been trained to fight in alien environments. Their faces were painted with traditional Korean war masks that would strike fear into alien hearts. The soldiers carried weapons that had been specially designed to kill each type of alien: the crystal-shattering guns for the Helians, the gas disruption bombs for the Nethers, the pheromone scramblers for the Cricks. Each weapon had been tested and perfected in secret human laboratory. So-Young had studied the layout of the alien headquarters for months. She knew where every guard post was located, and when the security patrols would change shifts, she knew which rooms contained the most important alien leaders and which systems controlled the planet's defenses. The mission was simple but dangerous. They had to capture or kill every alien commander on the planet before they could organize a defense against the human attack. The aliens would never expect humans to strike first because they thought humans were too peaceful and weak to start a war, but So-Young knew better. She had grown up hearing stories about the Korean War and how her grandfather had fought against impossible odds to protect his homeland. She understood that sometimes peaceful people had to become warriors to survive. As her team moved through the tunnels toward their targets, So-Young felt a cold anger burning in her chest. The aliens had betrayed humanity, and now they would pay the price. She would show them that humans could be just as deadly as any predator in the galaxy. The attack would begin in exactly 6 hours, and when it was over, the aliens would understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something dangerous in humanity, and now they would face the consequences of their betrayal. The attack began at exactly 3 in the morning, when most of the alien worlds were dark and sleeping. Engineer Tae-Young sat in his control room and pressed a single button on his secret panel. Across 17 different planets, the lights went out all at the same time. The aliens had no idea what was happening. Their emergency systems tried to turn on, but the backup power generators received wrong signals and shut down instead. The great cities that had been shining like stars suddenly became dark and silent. The aliens stumbled around in the darkness, trying to understand why their technology had failed them. On The planet Helix Prime Major So-Young Kim led her soldiers out of the maintenance tunnels and into the alien military. Headquarters the Helian guards could not see in the dark like humans could. Their crystal bodies glowed with a soft light that made them easy targets for the human soldier So-Young. And her team moved through the corridors like hunting wolves. They wore night vision goggles that let them see everything clearly while the aliens were blind and confused. The Korean war masks on their faces looked terrifying in the green glow of the night vision equipment. The first Helian guard they encountered was standing at his post trying to contact his commanders on his radio. But the radio was not working because Taeyong had crashed all the communication systems. The guard never saw the human soldiers coming until it was too late. So-Young fired her crystal-shattering gun and the guard exploded into 1,000 pieces of broken glass. The sound echoed through the dark hallways and other guards started running toward the noise, but they were running into a trap the human soldiers had studied. Helium biology for months. They knew that the aliens' crystal bodies were strong but brittle. They knew exactly what frequency of sound would make them crack and shatter. The special bullets in their guns vibrated at just the right speed to turn any Helian into a pile of glowing dust within 20 minutes. So-Young and her team had cleared the first floor of the headquarters building. They moved from room to room, killing every alien they found. The Helians tried to fight back, but their energy weapons needed power from the main grid, and the power was gone up. In space, Captain Min-Woo Lee watched the attack unfold from his hidden command ship. His stealth fleet had jumped out of hyperspace right on schedule, and now they were attacking the orbital defense platforms around alien worlds. The aliens had built their defenses to stop large invasion fleets, not small fast ships that could slip between their sensor nets. Min-Woo and his captains had spent years studying the weak points in alien defense systems. They knew exactly where to strike to cause the most damage. One by one, the great defense platforms went dark as human boarding parties seized control of their weapons. The aliens had superior numbers, but the humans had something much more valuable. They had experience fighting against impossible odds. Min-Woo remembered the stories his grandfather had told him about the Korean War, when Chinese armies had attacked with millions of soldiers, but small groups of Korean fighters had held mountain passes against overwhelming numbers. The secret was not to fight fair, but to fight smart. The human ships were much smaller than the alien battleships, but they were also much faster and harder to hit. The aliens tried to use their massive weapons, but those weapons were designed to fight other big ships, not tiny fighters that darted around like angry wasps. Dr. Sujin Han was working in her laboratory, releasing the biological weapons she had created. The first target was the nether homeworld, where the gas aliens lived in floating cities in their planets' thick atmosphere. Sujin had loaded her engineered fungus into special missiles that would spread the spores through the nether cities. The fungus would eat the chemicals that held the nether bodies together, and within hours the entire population would dissolve into harmless gas. The second target was the Crix colonies, where the insect aliens lived in giant hives. The pheromone scramblers would make the worker insects unable to understand orders from their queens. The hive minds would collapse into chaos as millions of insects started fighting each other. But the most important target was the Vorthok Empire that was still attacking Earth. The slow-acting poison had been loaded into their food supply 6 months ago, and now it was starting to take effect. The Vorthok warriors were becoming weak and sick just when they needed to be strong. On 17 different worlds, alien governments were collapsing as their leaders were killed or captured. The Great Council that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was falling apart in a single night. The aliens had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Most wars in the galaxy were fought with honor and rules. Both sides would line up their fleets and fight big battles in space. But humans did not believe in fighting fair when their survival was at stake. Instead, they struck from the shadows. Like assassins, they poisoned food supplies and crashed computer systems. They turned the aliens' own technology against them and exploited every weakness they could find. The psychological effect was even worse than the physical damage, as news of the attacks spread through alien communication networks. Panic began to spread. The aliens realized that they were fighting an enemy that did not follow the normal rules of war. Humans did not just defeat their enemies, they destroyed them completely. They did not take prisoners, they eliminated threats. They did not negotiate with people who had betrayed them, they made examples of them. Admiral Young-Soo Park commanded the main human fleet from his flagship. The sole victory, he had been waiting in a hidden base in the asteroid belt for 3 years. Preparing for this moment, now his ships were emerging from hyperspace all over the galaxy. The alien fleets tried to respond, but their communication systems were down and their commanders were dead or captured. Without coordination, the great alien armadas were just collections of individual ships that could be defeated one at a time. Young-Soo had studied every major space battle in human history, from the ancient Korean turtle ships that had defeated the Japanese Navy to the modern orbital battles that had unified Earth. He understood that victory went to the side that could adapt and improvise, not the side with the biggest guns. The aliens were learning that lesson the hard way. Their massive battleships were powerful, but they were also slow and predictable. The human ships were smaller, but they could change course quickly and strike from unexpected directions. As the battle raged across the galaxy, one thing became clear to every alien who witnessed it: humanity was not the peaceful species they had pretended to be. They were predators who had been hiding their true nature behind smiles and diplomatic words. Now the mask was off, and the aliens were seeing humans as they really were, the descendants of warriors who had conquered the most dangerous planet in the galaxy and who would never again allow themselves to be betrayed by anyone. Within 3 days, the great alien civilization that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was falling apart. Admiral Young-Soo Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the reports come in from every corner of space. The aliens were running scared, and their governments were collapsing one by one. The Helian crystal cities were cracking and breaking as human sound weapons tuned to the exact frequency of their crystal bodies turned their own buildings into weapons against them. The beautiful towers that had taken centuries to grow were shattering like glass windows in an earthquake. The nether gas cities were dissolving as Dr. Sujin Han's engineered bacteria consumed the chemicals that held them together. Millions of gas aliens were losing their ability to maintain solid form and were disappearing into the atmosphere of their own planets. The Crix hive colonies had descended into complete chaos as the artificial pheromones confused their collective minds. The worker insects were attacking their own queens, and the queen insects were giving contradictory orders that made no sense. The great hive minds that had controlled billions of insects were breaking down into madness. Intelligence officer Hyung-Mi-Oh had undergone painful surgery to change her face so she could look like a member of a minor alien species called the Velk. She had infiltrated the emergency meeting of the Galactic Council that was being held on a secret station in deep space. The surviving alien leaders were arguing desperately about how to respond to the human uprising. Some of them wanted to surrender and beg for mercy. Others demanded that they fight to the last alien and take as many humans with them as possible. None of them understood that it was already too late. Kyung-Mi listened to their debates with cold satisfaction. The aliens were finally learning what it felt like to be helpless and afraid. They were experiencing the same terror that humans had felt when the Vorthek Empire had attacked Earth and no one had come to help. Helian Ambassador was flickering weakly as his crystal body developed stress fractures from the constant fear and anxiety. He kept saying that his people were a peaceful race and did not deserve to be exterminated, but he had said the same thing about humans when the Vorthek had attacked. The Nether representative was barely able to maintain his gaseous form as the biological weapons slowly poisoned his species. The toxins were spreading through the Nether homeworld faster than anyone had expected. Soon there would be no Nether aliens left alive anywhere in the galaxy. The Crix delegate was twitching and making strange clicking sounds as his connection to the hive mind broke down completely. The other aliens were afraid to get too close to him because they could see that he was losing his sanity. But the most pathetic sight was the Vorthek general who had been captured during the failed invasion of Earth. He was chained to a chair, and his once proud warrior species was dying from the slow poison that Dr. Sujin had put in their food supply. The general kept demanding to know why humans had used biological weapons against civilians, but Kyung-Mi knew the answer. The Vorthek had bombed human cities and killed billions of innocent people when they had attacked Earth, they had shown no mercy to human children or families. Lieutenant Colonel Dong Hyen Choi was leading his Special Forces team through the ruins of New Geneva, the diplomatic center where the Galactic Council had once made all their important decisions. The city was burning and alien bodies were scattered in the streets like broken toys as soldiers moved with the cold efficiency of professional killers, but their eyes burned with the fire of warriors who had seen their homeworld under attack. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for revenge. Against every alien who had betrayed humanity, the team found the Helian trade minister hiding in a basement beneath the ruins of the council building. The alien was begging for mercy and promising to give humans anything they wanted in exchange for his life. But Dong Hyen had no interest in negotiations. The time for talking was over. The aliens had shown their true nature when they had abandoned Earth to be destroyed. Now they would learn what humanity was really capable of when they were pushed too far. Dong Hyen executed the trade minister with a single shot from his sidearm. The crystal alien shattered into 1,000 pieces that scattered across the floor like broken glass. The sound echoed through the empty building like a death knell for alien civilization. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as human special forces teams hunted down every alien leader they could find. The great council members who had once ruled over hundreds of worlds were being killed like common criminals, but something unexpected was happening. As the human assault continued, other alien species that had been suppressed by the Council were beginning to rise up in rebellion. They had seen that the great powers of the galaxy were not invincible after all. The Coven people who had been enslaved by the Helians for 3 centuries suddenly turned on their crystal masters. The Beltari traders who had been forced to pay tribute to the Crix began attacking insect colonies. The Threx miners who had worked in nether gas mines started sabotaging. The equipment revolution was spreading from system to system as centuries of resentment and anger finally found an outlet. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, and humanity was both the cause and the beneficiary of the chaos on Earth. The Vorthek invasion force was retreating in disorder as their soldiers became too weak to fight. The biological weapons were working faster than anyone had expected. The entire Vorthek military was collapsing as their warriors fell sick and died. The human defense forces that had been fighting desperately to protect their homeworld suddenly found themselves winning. The alien ships that had seemed so powerful just days ago were now limping back toward their own space with crews that were dying from an invisible enemy. But the victory was not without cost. The human soldiers who had defended Earth had seen their cities burning and their people dying. They had watched helplessly as alien bombs fell on schools and hospitals. Now they wanted revenge just as much as the soldiers who were fighting across the galaxy. The reports coming in from the front lines were painting a picture of total destruction. The aliens had underestimated humanity in every possible way. They had thought humans were weak because they were peaceful. They had thought humans were simple because they were friendly. They had thought humans were harmless because they followed rules. Now they were learning that humans had survived and conquered the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, not through weakness, but through strength. They had become the dominant species on Earth by being more adaptable, more determined, and more ruthless than anything else that had tried to kill them. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans were pushed too far, they did not just fight back, they eliminated the threat completely. They did not just win wars, they ended civilizations. They did not just defeat enemies, they erased them from existence. The great betrayal had awakened something terrible in humanity, and now there would be no going back. The aliens had wanted to see what humans were really made of beneath their diplomatic smiles and peaceful words. They were finding out, and they were terrified by what they discovered. Ambassador Junho Kim walked through the broken remains of the Grand Council chamber, where the most powerful beings in the galaxy had once made decisions that affected billions of lives. The great hall was now filled with rubble and alien blood. The golden throne where the council speaker had sat was cracked in half around him. The surviving members of the Galactic Council knelt in submission. Their various forms of surrender would have been funny if the situation had not been so serious. The Helian trade minister flickered like a dying light bulb as stress fractures spread through his crystal body. The nether representative could barely keep his gaseous form together and kept dissolving into wisps of colored smoke. The Crix delegate was the most pathetic sight of all. The once proud insect alien was twitching and clicking randomly as his connection to the hive mind had been completely severed by the human pheromone weapons. He was now just a single insect trying to think with a brain that had been designed to work as part of a collective standing over them all. Was the captured Vorthak general who had led the invasion of Earth. His warrior species was dying from the slow-acting biological weapon that Dr. Sujin had created. The poison was spreading through every Vorthak colony, and within a generation the entire species would be extinct. You want to know why we did this? Junho said in a voice that was calm and steady despite the destruction around him. His diplomatic training had taught him to remain composed even in the most extreme situations, but inside he was feeling a cold satisfaction that scared him. The aliens looked up at him with fear in their various types of eyes. They had finally understood that they were not dealing with the same peaceful humans who had signed treaties and shared medical knowledge 3 years ago. These humans were something much more dangerous. You took our gifts and left us to die. Junho continued walking slowly around the kneeling aliens like a predator circling wounded prey. You believed that because we smiled and bowed and followed your diplomatic rules. We were weak and helpless. He stopped in front of the Helian trade minister, who had been one of the first aliens to welcome humans into the galactic community. The crystal alien had seemed so wise and friendly back then, but now Junho could see the truth behind his glowing eyes. You thought you were so clever, he said. You took our medical technology and promised to protect us in return. But when the real test came, when Earth was actually under attack, you all found excuses to run away and hide. The Helian tried to speak, but his voice came out as a broken whisper. We never meant for this to happen. He said, our people are peaceful. We do not fight wars. We cannot. Junho laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Peaceful, he repeated. You were peaceful when it suited you. You were peaceful when someone else was doing the fighting for you, but you were not peaceful enough to honor your promises when humans needed help. The final reports were coming in from across the galaxy, and the numbers were almost impossible to believe. The Vorthak Empire had been completely destroyed. Every single one of their worlds had been rendered uninhabitable by biological weapons. The warrior species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries no longer existed. The council member species had been reduced to scattered groups of refugees hiding in the ruins of their former civilization. The Helians had lost 90% of their population when their crystal cities had been shattered by sound weapons. The nethers were dissolving into nothing as the engineered bacteria consumed their life sustaining chemicals. The Cricks had suffered the worst fate of all. The disruption of their hive minds had driven the entire species insane. Billions of insect aliens were wandering aimlessly through their ruined colonies, unable to think or function without the collective consciousness that had once guided them. Colonel Ji-hoon Quan approached the ambassador with a datapad containing the final casualty reports. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of billions of sentient beings had died in the space of a single week. The human military response had been more effective than anyone had dared to hope. The alien technological databases had been captured intact, giving humanity access to advanced science that would have taken them centuries to develop on their own. The industrial capacity of dozens of worlds was now under human control. The hyperspace routes that connected the galaxy were being monitored by human sensors. In less than 7 days, humanity had transformed from a small client species into the dominant military power in known space. The aliens who had once looked down on humans as primitive newcomers were now begging for mercy from their former inferiors. But Colonel Quan looked troubled despite the military victory. Sir, he said quietly, I have been reading the reports from our psychological warfare division. The effects of what we have done are spreading beyond the target species. Other alien races that were not involved in the betrayal are also surrendering. Preemptively, they are afraid that we will turn our weapons on them next. Some of them are abandoning their homeworlds and fleeing to the outer rim of the galaxy. Junho nodded slowly. He had expected this to happen. The demonstration of human military power had been so overwhelming that it had terrified every species in the galaxy. Even the aliens who had remained neutral were now afraid that humanity might decide they were threats to the galaxy that had betrayed them. Now lay broken at their feet, but the victory had come at a cost that would haunt humanity for generations. They had saved their own species by becoming the very thing they had once fought against. They had become conquerors and destroyers. They had become the terror that haunted the nightmares of peaceful civilizations. They had become the monsters that parents of other species would use to frighten their children. The surviving aliens were looking at him with expressions of absolute terror, and Junho realized that humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had revealed their true nature to the galaxy, and now they would have to live with the consequences. The humans who had once been welcomed as friends and allies were now seen as the most dangerous predators in known space. Every alien who looked at a human would remember what had happened when humanity had been pushed too far. The treaty had been broken and humanity had delivered their reckoning, but the price of that reckoning would be paid by future generations who would inherit a galaxy that feared and hated them. The aliens had learned not to betray humanity, but they had also learned never to trust them again. As Junho looked at the broken council chamber around him, he wondered if the cost had been worth it. Humanity had survived, but in doing so they had lost something precious. They had lost their innocence and their hope for peaceful coexistence with other species. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The betrayal had changed both sides forever, and there would be no going back to the way things had been before. 5 years after the Great Reckoning, Ambassador Junho Kim stood once again before a massive viewing window, but this time he was looking down at a very different galaxy. The space station around him was called New Sol Station, and it orbited a former council world that was now the capital of human-controlled space. The station was enormous, much larger than the old diplomatic outpost where he had worked before. The architecture was a mixture of human efficiency and alien beauty, combining the best of both civilizations. The corridors were wide and bright, filled with the sound of multiple languages as different species worked together under human guidance, but there was something different about the way the aliens moved and spoke. Now they were respectful and careful in a way they had never been before. When they looked at humans, there was always a hint of fear in their eyes, even when they were smiling and trying to be friendly. The surviving alien species had been reorganized. Under the new human administration, those who had remained neutral during the betrayal were allowed to keep some independence, but they had to follow human laws and accept human oversight. Those who had actively participated in abandoning Earth found themselves under permanent military occupation. Director Nari Shin ran the Galactic Integration Department, where former council species learned to adapt to the new reality. She was a former military officer who had fought in the war against the aliens. Now she used those same skills to manage the complex process of rebuilding galactic civilization. Her methods were firm but fair. Alien colonies that cooperated with human authorities found that their living conditions improved dramatically. Human technology and medicine were shared freely with those who had earned trust through loyalty and service, but colonies that resisted or tried to rebel discovered that humanity had not forgotten how to be ruthless when necessary. The human military maintained a network of bases throughout the galaxy, and any sign of organized resistance was met with swift and overwhelming force. The aliens had learned that it was much better to work with humans than against them. The new galactic government provided stability and prosperity, but it was the kind of peace that came from strength, not from friendship. Everyone knew that the humans were in charge and that challenging their authority would have terrible consequences. Dr. Sujin Hen continued her research, but now her laboratories were dedicated to healing rather than destruction. The biological weapons that had devastated alien worlds were being converted into medical treatments that could cure diseases and extend lifespans. It was a strange kind of justice that the same technology that had ended entire civilizations was now being used to save them. The alien refugees who had survived the war were receiving medical care that was better than anything they had ever known before, but Sujin knew that her work would never wash away the guilt she felt about the billions of lives that had been lost. The weapons she had created had been necessary to save humanity, but they had also turned her into one of the most feared people in the galaxy. The human fleet continued to patrol the galaxy with quiet efficiency. Admiral Young-Soo Park had become something of a legend among the stars. The man who had brought the mighty Galactic Council to its knees in a single week was now responsible for keeping the peace across hundreds of worlds. His ships were painted black and bore the symbols of Earth and Korea. They moved through space like sharks through dark water, always watching for signs of trouble. The mere sight of a human warship was enough to prevent most conflicts before they could begin. The alien species that had once commanded vast fleets now had to ask permission from human authorities before they could move military vessels between star systems. The great armadas that had once enforced council law had been disbanded or converted to civilian use, but the most important change was in humanity itself. The war had revealed something about human nature that had been hidden beneath centuries of civilization. Humans had always been predators, but they had learned to hide their fangs behind smiles and diplomatic words now. The galaxy knew the truth behind. Every human diplomat was a warrior who remembered every betrayal and every broken promise behind. Every human traitor was a spy who was watching and listening and reporting back to military intelligence. Behind every human doctor was a researcher who knew exactly how to kill any alien species if they became a threat to children who were growing up in the new galactic order would never know the fear that their parents had felt when Earth was under attack. They would grow up knowing that humanity was the dominant species in the galaxy and that no alien would ever dare to threaten them, but they would also grow up knowing that their safety had been bought with the blood of billions of innocent beings. The victory over the Council had saved humanity, but it had also stained their hands with a darkness that would never wash away Engineer. Tae-Young was now the director of Galactic Communications Systems. He had used his computer viruses to crash alien technology during the war, and now he used those same skills to maintain the networks that connected the human empire. Every message sent between alien worlds passed through human-controlled relays. Every piece of information was monitored and analyzed by human intelligence agencies. The aliens had privacy and freedom within limits, but they always knew that humans were watching. The Great Betrayal had taught humanity a valuable lesson. Trust was a luxury that could be fatal in a hostile galaxy. The species that had survived and thrived were those that kept their enemies close and their friends even closer. Captain Minwoo Lee commanded one of the patrol fleets that maintained order in the outer colonies. His stealth ships were no longer hidden in asteroid fields but moved openly through space as symbols of human power. The alien pirates and raiders who had once terrorized trade routes had either been eliminated or had fled to the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. The space lanes were safer now than they had been in centuries, but that safety came with a price. Every alien who looked up at the stars knew that humanity was watching. Every government that made policy had to consider how the humans would react. Every military force that planned operations had to remember what had happened to those who had challenged human authority. The treaty that had been signed at Kepler Station was now displayed in a museum on Earth as a reminder of the cost of betrayal. The document was surrounded by artifacts from the war, including weapons that had been used to destroy entire species and photographs of the alien leaders who had been executed for their crime. School children visited the museum to learn about the price of trusting enemies and the importance of being strong enough to defend themselves. The lesson was clear. In a dangerous galaxy, survival belonged to those who were willing to do whatever was necessary to protect their own people. Ambassador Junho Kim had kept his position, but his job was very different now. Instead of negotiating with equals, he managed subjects who had no choice but to obey. The diplomatic skills that had once been used to build friendships were now used to maintain control. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but more importantly, it had learned to respect them. The new order was built on the understanding that humans would never again allow themselves to be vulnerable to the treachery of those they had trusted. The stars looked the same as they had 5 years ago, but everything else had changed. The galaxy was at peace, but it was the peace of the graveyard, maintained by the constant threat of human retaliation. The treaty had been broken and humanity had delivered their reckoning. Now the galaxy would live with the consequences of that reckoning for generations to come. The aliens had learned that the gentle species they had betrayed possessed something that no other race in the galaxy had ever developed: the cold, calculating fury of a species that had survived by being willing to destroy anything that threatened them. New Order was stable and prosperous, but it was also built on a foundation of fear. and the memory of what happened when humanity was pushed too far. The galaxy would never forget, and humanity would never forgive. The betrayal had changed everything, and there would be no going back.